What is going on, y'all? KMBest here. Bastion just dropped. Let's talk about what he can and can't do in Marvel Snap. Spoiler alert, I did have a 70% win rate with one deck in this video. Bastion is a 4/3 with an on-reveal ability that adds copies of the other cards at the location you play him that you control to your hand, then sets their power to 3 and their cost to 2. He is he's sentinelizing. He is effectively sentinelizing the cards at that location, turning them into sentinels, 2/3s, adding them to your hand. It is a good design in terms of flavor, but how good is it at actually winning you games? Well, I do think it is fairly limited in terms of application. This is not a card that goes in every deck. It's closer to something like an Aranya or a Madam Web that is really only going in a couple of very niche spots, but can demonstrate some reasonable power when it's put in those spots. The biggest thing Bastion has going against him is that if you are not getting enough payoff out of him, he's just a weak body. Like, this is a card that could very easily have been 4/5 and been a lot more playable across a generic range of archetypes, but I suspect in part because they wanted to keep him in flavor, and I suspect in part because they wanted Cerebro to be a part of what this card was able to do, they kept him at 3, which is the same power as the dudes that he makes. This is a limitation. Put it bluntly, if you're not doing something really broken with your Bastion, then you're not really playing him correctly. And really broken is usually a card that scales with itself. You're going to see a bunch of different ways in which Bastion works with cards that scale with themselves. Cerebro is a card that can scale with itself. You bast the Cerebro, that has 3 power. You copy the Cerebro, the copy has 3 power. Both of them scale with each other, right? Another example of a card scaling with itself is Victoria Hand. The copy of Victoria Hand is, of course, scaling with its own ability. Or, for a little more of an esoteric example, Daken scales with itself in that more copies of Daken give you more Muramasa shards to send away, multiplying the power of all of the Daken copies. That is what Bastion is doing. This is a card that is explicitly a force multiplier on cards like that. So if you're going to play cards like that, he might be worth considering picking up. The decks we're going to talk about today are overwhelmingly built around scaling cards like that. That's what this guy's role effectively has to be, because his body is so weak, and because, additionally, he's almost like a 4-cost activate. You play him on 4, but you only really see the returns for it on 5, and you can't really play him on 6 because he's terrible. So you have to get something massive out of him, and it has to be something cheap enough that you can realize the gains that you get. This pushes you further towards the discard package, towards Cerebro packages, and towards Victoria Hand packages. I was surprised that discard was the deck that I had the most success with this card in. I went 19-8 with the discard deck in High Infinite. I think that that was very, very notable, especially because it didn't feel like it was fully solved. But when you think about why I was surprised, it was largely because I expected him to be in better decks like Cerebro and Victoria Hand, as opposed to this, which I think many would argue isn't even necessarily the best discard deck that people are currently playing. So why did he fit so well in here and not nearly as well, in my opinion, in the other lists? I think a lot of that is down to the card quality of the other lists is notably higher. Discard is a deck that has massive power spikes. The difference between a game you play with 1 Morbius and with 2 Morbii is like 30 power some of the time. The difference of 1 Daken and 2 Daken, or 2 Dakens and 3 Dakens, is enormous. And so you see that this is a card that can actually realistically double up on what this deck's power spikes actually are. you're not really using this to copy Blade or things of that nature. This is for copying your carries and your Bullseye. Bullseye, another great example of a card that scales with itself. This is a card that if you get your swarms going, your first Bullseye feeds your second Bullseye, you get more things thrown into your opponent's face, and you get more procs on your Meek, on your Collector, and on your Morbius. And that is the role Bastion is playing here. He's a little bit like slightly greedier Frigga. The idea here is basically what you're going to do with this guy is you play a 2 and a 3 in the same lane, and then you copy the 2 and the 3. And so that 2 and the 3 can be a lot of different things. You know, Collector Daken, it can be Morbius Daken, it can be Morbius Bullseye. You're kind of just mix and matching. Pick a couple carries, copy the carries, play out the carries. Final turn, really what you want to do is have a swarm in hand, have a Bullseye on the board, do your MODOK Blade, vomit a billion points. It's pretty straightforward. But, and I think this is notable, it felt like a lot of people were staying when they absolutely shouldn't have been staying. Like, one of the weaknesses of this deck to me is it's only as good as your opponents are at not recognizing what's going on. There was a lot yesterday where I was just like, well, I'm going to win every lane by like 20 points, and people were just like staying anyway, because I guess people have forgotten what this deck does. And I think this deck definitely sort of goes in and out of like people's experience of this deck is pretty vastly important to its win rate. Like when Discard first came out, when this build of Discard first started taking over this kind of stuff, it was very much like, wow, this might actually squash mid-range forever, but it turns out it's not necessarily consistent enough to do that. Bastion helps you with the consistency, and people just aren't used to having to respect you the way that they have to respect you now when you have as many carries as Bastion enables you to get. So largely, I think this one ends up being not necessarily a better deck than Cerebro 3 or Victoria Hand, but it is the place where Bastion felt like the most immediate upgrade. As far as Victoria Hand goes, I think what ends up happening is you end up making some concessions to like fit Bastion in, and you see how Bastion is influencing the deck building here, right? Like this is not just a deck that is running Bastion just to run Bastion, which might end up being the right thing. He is a massive force multiplier on your good draws, like really, 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 really big, but he's not very good when you're not doing stuff. So it is a sort of like give and take between him and Moon Girl, say, if you're going to play a traditional Victoria Hand build. So if you're playing something that's like really diving into like, I want to be a Bastion deck, you started up making other concessions, like running Zabu and running other 4s in order to make this happen. I don't know if this is all necessary, but it speaks to the power of the core in the Victoria Hand deck. Like, you have to find real reasons to swap out any cards in that deck because so many of them are so good, not just at their jobs, but at everything. We talked about this in yesterday's video, where we discussed how half of the Victoria Hand package got splashed in another deck that doesn't even have Victoria Hand in it. Cards like Quinjet and Iron Patriot and Mirage, these are just like good cards right now. And then also you have this Victoria Hand stuff going. By the way, Quinjet, quite important to Bastion really popping off in this list. That one energy might not seem like a lot, but it is absolutely massive. When you play a list like this, the one thing you're going to want to keep an eye on big time, though, is your board space, and that is where Bastion can really hurt you, because he typically is copying two things. He does not have a lot of power. The things he's copying usually do not have a lot of power, which means the Bastion lane can often be a place where your opponents can say, I'm pretty sure I'm winning this, because they're just not playing anything that's big enough in it. I do think that there might be room for a Bastion V-Hand deck, but I think it's much more up for debate whether that's going to be the best build of V-Hand, and I would lean, if I had to guess, that he's probably not going to be the best build of V-Hand continuing forward. In the immediate, I've seen a lot of people get success playing rogues in their V-Hand decks just so that other people playing V-Hand get screwed over. One of the main things that Bastion does to a metagame is makes people look for these sort of things that scale with each other. This one scales with itself, Victoria Hand, obviously. Cerebro scales with itself. Morbius, not necessarily what scales with itself, but you can definitely get some wins against a discard deck if you're playing Rogue and you get rid of one of their Morbii. It is the kind of card that is relevant in early days Bastioning, and you should consider it in your decks. Last up is Cerebro. Now, I know normally we talk about a lot more decks than this, but honestly, I think this is what Bastion is limited to. He's powerful in his scope, but his scope is very narrow, and that scope is very much about what I've talked about already. things that scale with each other, typically ongoings. Cerebro 3 definitely does enjoy this card. Like, this is an excuse to get rid of the fairly iffy version of the move package. There's some cool stuff here with, like, bastioning a Makari that actually makes him worthwhile. Obviously, you can Bastion your Cerebro, but honestly, a lot of the time, what you end up doing is just Bastioning some other stuff and getting 3s on the board. He is a combination force multiplier on your Cerebro and also just giving you more 3s that you can play out reasonably. You're pretty happy doing a lot of that stuff. Another card that he's very, very fun to copy with is Negasonic. So copying a Negasonic is absolutely beast mode. There's really not a way around that. It is a crazy, 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 crazy play to make, and you can really start pushing people to the edge with that one. I kind of almost wonder if there's not a Negasonic Gambit Killmonger build of Cerebro 3 sitting out there waiting to be discovered, because it seems like it'd be kind of scary to have multiple Negasonics being possible, let alone multiple Gambits in a situation like this. Like, just having that many things blown up and also being a Cerebro deck, it seems like it could be a really scary direction for this deck to go. But largely, Bastion is quite good here. I would be more sure that there is a good to competitive build of Bastion C3 than I am about good to competitive Bastion V Hand. I think Cerebro 3 is definitely a place that he does show up, but I also think it's pretty likely that he's not required in Cerebro 3 until a bunch of mirrors start showing up. Because obviously, if you're playing mirrors, the person who has more Cerebros is going to win those mirrors, right? So, like, the Bastion is really important in that world. But if he starts falling off and you see less of those mirrors, it's pretty up in the air as to whether or not this will be the best build of the deck into an open metagame. So what is this card actually? I think of him as kind of a Madam Web type card, but probably with a lower ceiling. This guy, unlike Madam Web, is not the card that you build around in those lists. He's a card that intensifies the build-arounds in those lists. Madam Web is a card that the whole archetype revolves around. Bastion is a card that supports the whole archetype that gets revolved around. So maybe a better analogy for him would be a Proxima Midnight type of card. That is sort of the range I see him in, and I think that's probably where your head should be at with regards to thinking about this guy. If force multiplication of these specific things becomes really metagame relevant, he is quite good at that. But it does require a specific set of circumstances to make you want to be that way. Outside of the discard deck, none of these decks feel like I'm getting as much out of Bastion as I would like for the price tag that is on him. However, the discard deck does feel pretty great. I do think that it'd be very easy for me to make a V-Hand deck and a Cerebro 3 deck that do not require Bastion. But with discard, I sort of sit there and look, and I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I don't need Bastion, but I feel like he's making this deck a decent amount better. So there is that. That's sort of my take on Bastion on day one. We're about to cut in to some footage of the discard gameplay. Apologies for any complaining. I lost some and then I won some, but like it's not immediately clear what's happening, so I was in a pretty bad headspace on stream. I'll work on it. Thank you so much. I've been KMBest. You've been phenomenal, and I will see you in the next one. Then next turn, it's some formulation of bullshit here. Well, what I could do is go Daken and then Grandmaster the Frigga up to the other Daken. But I think I'd rather just do the Bullseye. Daken mid, we need space for GM. Well, I guess. Oh, it's okay, we lucked out. Okay, so what we get is Blade, Colleen, Grandmaster. So we use one Bullseye. It goes Bullseye number 1, then Blade, Colleen, Grandmaster, Bullseye number 2. Yep. Pretty sure playing out Shard is better. Okay, so play out Shard. Blade, Colleen, Grandmaster, activate Bullseye, activate Bullseye. There goes my Grandmaster. That's what happens when you play out the Shard, Derek. So it's about hits. We need 3 hits middle, yeah? Oh, we got our 3 hits middle. Never mind. We're the fucking greatest gamer of all time. Okay, we got well above 3 hits middle. A Miraged, my Blade, or my Meek, presumably. Looks like it was the Meek. I'm imagining this is probably a snap, yeah? Probably losing the middle is the thing. Well. Imagine they run Mobius. Well, then I'm fucking dead. Gosh, that's a lot of points. Oh my god, what is it like being me? Modok left? No. I don't think so, at least. I could be wrong. Entirely possible that I'm fucking wrong. But I'm pretty sure we just win by 8 trillion here.
You won't need this anymore.
Because this is a bullseye for 5 and then a bullseye for 7. I would rather guarantee the throne room in the world where somehow we don't win the right. Because it's just a trillion points. We haven't even gotten to the second bullseye and we're casserolling. Yeah. Like, if we were losing the lane with 50 fucking 3 in it, which doesn't seem likely, we're probably winning the other 2. And when I'm a streamer, people get to actually know for a fact whether or not they're dead or not. So playing decks like this just doesn't work. We should snap this? I think we do. I want to die. Are we fucking serious? Holy shit. Oh my god, the Morbius comes back. That's crazy. I didn't expect that at all. I don't know. Seems good. I would imagine this is the biggest win of all time. Fast forward? No, not fast forwarding? Okay. Pretty big win. Victory. Don't notice or realize or anything like that. cut fucking Grandmaster. It's so sad being me. Boy, but it is on theme. Okay, someone's got a Hydra Bob looking for a snap on that altar of death, eh? Surprisingly okay with me. Am I gonna want to have 2 extra energy on this altar of death next turn? I feel like they're gonna Mobius me. But I'll walk into it, sure, I don't give a fuck. So since I feel like I'm looking down the barrel of a Mobius, let's just have it happen to me anyway. Do I play around it in a meaningful way by doing the early one first and then is that a meaningful play around? If I activate Bullseye first, get 2 Scorn procs, can it matter? It could. Be expected. Don't we get 2 procs either way? We get to feel smart because we played around it, right? That's what happens here. I'm pretty sure we win for what it's worth. Look at us playing around it, though. We wanted them to know that we knew. You feel me? We want them to know that we knew. Pretty sure we win both lanes, but I'm not positive. No, we lose the left one, but we win a tiebreaker. It's chill. We want them to know that we knew they were Mobiusing us, right? Like, we want them to be aware that we were aware. Dude, the amount of times I wish I could, like, get a blade for a swarm on the final turn of the game is crazy. Can I beat a negative deck? I kind of wonder.
Opponent snapped.
Dude, I kind of legit wonder. At the throw right. We got a top deck Modok or Blade, I think. Which is, there's a bunch of those cards. Okay, that's the wrong fucking card. Okay, let's see if we can do something here. We gotta play the Scorn out. We go this. Activate 3 Bullseyes. Probably die. It's the negative Jane. Yeah. It's 3 fucking Bullseyes. You think we have to throw right? Okay. I buy that. Why'd they order that way? They fucked it.
I am Iron Man.
They fucked it. They should have copied the first gore. They fucked up. Oh no, they had... Christ. Okay. Now, that is not good, but also, they did give us extra energy this turn, which matters a ton, I think. Sure. Yeah, there's some bad top decks here, don't get me wrong. But some good ones, too. Okay, now we're definitely on It's MODOK or we're fucked. Meek off the top, huh? Damn, that's some shit. So I guess the question becomes this. Yeah, you spoke that shit into existence for sure. This might win. Holy shit. We did it. We're a fucking genius, dude.